The league is broke. They can't pay you what you ladies think you deserve. They can pay you what you're worth, but what you think you're owed, WNBA doesn't have enough money to cover that expense. Mark Cuban very politely, shout out to you, Mark, very politely says these teams in this league, they don't make enough moolah. The league doesn't make enough moolah to pay you guys what you want. Sorry, it's the reality of the situation.
The league is broke. That's not clickbait. That's not exaggeration. That's Mark Cuban stating what everyone's been dancing around for years. And the reaction from WNBA players? Exactly what you'd expect when someone finally says the quiet part out loud. But here's what makes this different. Cuban didn't just diagnose the problem. He came with a solution that could actually work. And it's so simple, you're going to wonder why nobody thought of it before.
Mark Cuban, responding to the latest news that WNBA players are asking for an average of 27.5% of league revenue and team-provided housing for all players in recent CBA discussions. The WNBA's response, unrealistic and would cause hundreds of millions of damage. Let's get into it. The crazy part is that no matter what the WNBA does with salaries, every star college player will take a pay cut to play in the WNBA.
Let's back up and look at what triggered this. In recent CBA discussions, WNBA players asked for an average of 27.5% of league revenue plus team-provided housing for all players. The league's response? Unrealistic. They said it would cause hundreds of millions in damage. And that's when Cuban stepped into the conversation with some uncomfortable math. Here's the reality that nobody wants to acknowledge. Star college players are taking pay cuts to play in the WNBA. Not metaphorical pay cuts, actual, quantifiable financial losses. Cuban asked athletic directors what the going rate is for a star player on a power conference women's basketball team. The answer? $500,000 to $1.2 million per year. In college. With NIL money flowing from donors and shared school revenues.
Memory serves me correctly. Cam Ward, last year, prior to his final season in Miami, so 2 years ago at this point, declared for the draft. Miami said, hey, we got a big fat bag for you here, more than you would make being a rookie in 2025. Come to Miami, we'll pay you, and then you can go to the pros. Cam Ward said, bet, I don't want to take a pay cut, and I don't want to sit either. I'll come back to college, I'll make a massive amount of money, and I'll play for Miami. So this happens in college football quite often. Carson Beck, if Carson Beck goes to the NFL, you know how much money Carson Beck is going to be losing, quote unquote, taking less, be losing a lot of money.
And it's not just women's basketball. This is happening across professional sports right now. Cam Ward had this exact decision 2 years ago. Miami offered him a massive NIL bag, more than he'd make as an NFL rookie in 2025. So he stayed in college, made his money, played every game, and then went pro. Carson Beck is facing the same calculation right now. These athletes are doing the math and realizing the professional league is the pay cut. Think about how backwards that is. The pinnacle of your sport, the league you've dreamed about since childhood, pays you less than staying in school. That's not sustainable. That's not how professional sports are supposed to work.
In the NBA, a team can't go to a sponsor and negotiate a direct payment deal for a player. In college, they effectively can with NIL money. When I have written checks to IU, I knew which players we're trying to get with the money. Quote, parentheses, although I never tie the money to specific players, it's up to them. The WNBA needs to look at allowing the same thing. Let the teams go to local sponsors and work out payments to players as part of sponsorship packages. The big name players have agents to do this. The rest make minimal amounts, with or without an agent. Let WNBA teams pay NIL money to its players. It's counterintuitive for NBA folks, but here is the issue. WNBA teams don't have the margin dollars from tickets, sponsors, and shared revenues like TV to pay bigger salaries using their own cash flow.
So here's Cuban's solution. And pay attention because this is actually brilliant. He says the WNBA needs to let teams negotiate direct NIL payment deals with sponsors for their players. Not from team cash flow, from sponsors. Just like college does it. The teams would go to local sponsors and work out payments to players as part of sponsorship packages. Cuban knows this works because he's done it himself. He's written checks to Indiana University, knowing exactly which players they were trying to get with the money. He adds the parenthetical that he never tied the money to specific players directly. It's up to the school. But everyone knows how this game works. Now, before you say this sounds like what the Las Vegas Aces got busted for, Cuban addresses that head-on. Make it legal. Create a cap per player based on years of experience. Some teams will be terrible at securing these deals, and that's where the WNBA league office comes in to help. They'll probably suck at it initially too, but like collegiate NIL, the sponsorship packages will supplement player salaries without undermining the economics of the teams and league itself.
Create a cap per player based on years of experience. Yes, some teams will suck at it. That's where the WNBA comes in to help. They will suck at it as well for some period, but like collegiate NIL, the sponsorship packages will supplement player salaries without undermining the economics of the teams and league itself. The next question will be competitive balance issues. The big markets can do this better. They have a great addressable market for sponsors. The WNBA could require that some percentage of the NIL money deals go into a pool for a version of revenue share. Very well. This is effectively what happens or did with jersey ads. I remember advocating that the jersey ads be split with all teams because the greatest value to sponsors come not from local TV or games, but from national TV, playoffs, and jersey sales. This would be similar. Obviously, I'm just spitballing this, but if they came on Shark Tank, that's what I would suggest.
But here's the part that's going to make some teams very uncomfortable. Cuban acknowledges the obvious problem: competitive balance. Big markets like New York and Los Angeles have massive addressable markets for sponsors. They can secure bigger NIL deals easier than teams in smaller markets. That's just reality. Cuban's answer? The WNBA could require that some percentage of the NIL money deals go into a pool for revenue sharing. It's effectively what happened with jersey ads. Cuban says he advocated that jersey ads be split among all teams because their greatest value to sponsors comes not from local TV or games, but from national TV, playoffs, and jersey sales. This would work the same way. And look, some markets will still have advantages. That's unavoidable. But what's the difference between that and what already happens? Players go to New York for less money because they're in the Big Apple and they'll get sponsorship deals just by being there. That's happening right now off the books. Stephanie Dolson went from Phoenix to Indiana, played with Caitlin Clark, and blew up into a superstar with deals everywhere. Your proximity to either a big market or greatness means you benefit one way or another. So why not make it official and structured?
Right? Let's say, right? Some places will have a better advantage than others. But what's the difference between that and somebody going to New York for less money, but you're in the Big Apple and you're going to get sponsorship deals just by being in the Big Apple? One's on the record, one's off the record, fair. What's the difference between that and sort of what Sophie Cunningham, dare I say, did with Indiana? She went from Phoenix to Indiana, played with Caitlin Clark. She blew up. She's a superstar. She's all over the place. So your proximity to either a big market or greatness, you're going to benefit one way or another. Let's take a look at some of these reactions. If true that the league isn't profitable and able to stand on its own, does any of it matter? Just let it fold. It's subpar basketball. Once everyone is done pretending to care about it, it'll fade away naturally. Yikes. Yikes. The big problem is that no one watches women's basketball because the level of competition is so low. Men are so much better at the game. This looks like a woman saying.
Now let's talk about why this matters so much right now. The responses to Cuban's post reveal the deeper problem facing the WNBA. One commenter wrote, "If true that the league isn't profitable and able to stand on its own, does any of it matter? Just let it fold. It's subpar basketball. Once everyone is done pretending to care about it, it'll fade away naturally." That's harsh, but it represents a real segment of the audience. Another woman responded, "The big problem is that no one watches women's basketball because the level of competition is so low. Men are so much better at the game that you're essentially watching middle school level hoops. The game is boring for everyone that doesn't see it as a social cause." When women are saying this about women's basketball, you've got a perception problem that goes beyond just marketing. But the most insightful comment cuts to the heart of the issue. It says the ownership structure is broken, and here's why. Players think the massive bump in attendance and ratings is to see players who don't actually fill the seats or make people watch games. The commissioner thinks it's due to a new mobile app. Yes, really. and because of other rookies with large social media followings who don't put asses in seats or draw ratings.
This as well, so I don't want to see anything in the comments. Men are so much better at the game that you're essentially watching middle school level hoops. The game is boring for everyone that doesn't see it as a social cause. Damn! Damn. The ownership structure is broken. It is broken. The problem with the WNBA, that they all think they are or should be as big of a draw as the one player in the league who is a bona fide superstar. So they think they are all the reason for the Caitlin Clark effect. Players think the massive bump in attendance and ratings is to see players who don't actually fill the seats or make people watch games. WNBA commissioner thinks it's due to a new mobile app. I'm not making this up. And because of other rookies not named Caitlin Clark who have large social media followings, but again, do not put asses in seats or draw ratings. David Webb, you're cooking here. Other stakeholders want the league and its success to develop according to what they want. A product showcasing Black and LGBTQ, you forgot the plus, women playing a half court, elbows in the paint, 80s NBA physical brand of basketball, instead of embracing the full court, fast-paced, exciting brand of ball that their lone household name has introduced to the league. That actually does bring a bigger audience and fill the seats. Like the video, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. See you next time, as always.
Here's what Cuban is really saying underneath all the polite business language. WNBA teams don't have the margin dollars from tickets, sponsors, and shared revenues like TV to pay bigger salaries using their own cash flow. That's the sentence that matters. Own cash flow. Not their NBA parent team's cash flow. Their own money. Because when players say just dip into the Brooklyn Nets money, or use some of that Golden State Warriors cash, or take from the Lakers and Clippers, the answer is no. That's not your money. It's mine. You need to generate your own revenue to justify your own salaries. That's how businesses work, and this is where it gets uncomfortable for everyone involved. The WNBA has been subsidized by the NBA for decades, 27 years of losses covered by the parent league. At some point, you have to ask the question, when does this become a viable business on its own? When do the economics actually work without a bailout? Cuban's NIL solution is elegant because it sidesteps that entire argument. It doesn't require teams to spend money they don't have. It doesn't require the NBA to increase subsidies. It brings in external money from sponsors who want to associate with these athletes. The sponsors pay the players directly. The teams facilitate the deals. The league takes a cut for revenue sharing, and everyone benefits. But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. This only works if sponsors actually want to pay for association with WNBA players. And that comes back to viewership, ratings, and market value. You can't force sponsors to spend money on athletes who don't move the needle for their business. The market decides that, not the league, not the players, not social justice advocates on Twitter. The 2024 season proved that one player can change everything. Caitlin Clark's rookie season drove record attendance, record ratings, and record sponsor interest. Suddenly brands wanted in. Suddenly arenas were selling out. Suddenly national TV games were drawing real numbers. One player did that. Not the league office's mobile app, not the collective efforts of all the other rookies. One generational talent who plays a style of basketball that people actually want to watch. That commenter nailed it when they said stakeholders want the league to showcase a specific brand of basketball, half-court, elbows in the paint, 80s NBA physical style, instead of embracing the full-court, fast-paced, exciting brand that Caitlin Clark brought to the league. The player who actually brings in the audience is playing a style that some people in the league seem to resent. And that's the fundamental tension Cuban's proposal can't solve. You can create all the NIL structures you want, but if the league doesn't embrace the style of play and the players who actually draw viewers, the sponsor money won't materialize. You can't manufacture market demand through policy. You have to give people something they want to watch. So when Cuban says he's just spitballing, he's being modest. This is a legitimate solution to a real problem. But it only works if the WNBA is willing to acknowledge some hard truths about what actually drives interest in their product. It only works if teams are willing to hustle for local sponsor deals instead of expecting the NBA to keep writing checks. It only works if the league prioritizes entertainment value over ideology. The players asking for 27.5% of revenue aren't being unreasonable. NBA players get about 50%, but you can't get a percentage of revenue that doesn't exist. You can't demand housing stipends from teams that are already losing money. The math has to math. And right now, for most WNBA teams, it doesn't. Cuban's NIL proposal creates a path forward that doesn't require magic or charity. It requires work. It requires teams to build relationships with local sponsors. It requires the league office to facilitate and coordinate. It requires players to understand that their market value is determined by what sponsors will pay, not by what they think they deserve. And maybe most importantly, it requires everyone involved to admit that college athletes are currently getting better deals than professional players. That's embarrassing. That's backwards. That's unsustainable. But it's reality. And you can't fix a problem you won't acknowledge exists. So the question becomes, will the WNBA take Cuban's advice? Will they create a legal framework for team-facilitated NIL deals? Will they embrace the players and playing styles that actually draw audiences? Or will they keep pretending that a mobile app and social media followers equal real market value? Because here's what happens if they don't adapt. The best college players will keep taking pay cuts to go pro. The league will keep losing money. The NBA will eventually get tired of subsidizing losses. And that commenter's prediction about the league folding will start looking less like trolling and more like prophecy. Cuban just handed them a blueprint. The only question is whether they're willing to follow it. What do you think? Is Cuban's NIL solution the answer the WNBA needs, or is this just putting a band-aid on a fundamentally broken business model? Drop your take in the comments, hit that like button if this breakdown made sense, and subscribe because we're going to keep following this story as it develops. The CBA negotiations are going to be fascinating, and you're going to want to be here when the next chapter drops.